fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo.
Lucky!
Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear.
Hugh McLennan
rides again.
The morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
She said, I think you're trying to avoid coming in and getting some office work done. I said, don't believe everything you think. Everything we do or accomplish, it seems, starts with a thought. That perfect two-heel loop on the first calf at the branding fire. That finely crafted performance where every line of the song and every note on the guitar was played perfectly. Well, today, you'll hear from our often featured calf rope and psychologist friend, Dr. Michael Johnson again, with a look at how an average cowboy got to the top of his game in a very short time.
Clyde Van Voris was still kicking him in the bareback riding. Sean Davis was still tearing up the broncs. Dean Oliver was still catching calves faster than anybody else. And then my jaw dropped open.
And you'll find out why today. Well, hunting season is here, and Baxter Black has a hair-raising tale about a couple of guys who paid a lot of money to stay at a high-end hunting lodge.
The frightened hunter wheeled and ran into camp screaming that there was a grizzly bear in the hot tub.
And on the Rangeland news,
we have too many things going on in our lives, and so we don't go to bed early enough.
How much sleep do we really need? And especially, how much sleep do our kids need? And many other informative stories from the Rangeland newsroom. The Cowboy Poetry Spotlight has another masterpiece, this one from Slim McNaught.
It's the time like these when a cowboy sees the satisfaction of this life, with the world in a mess and many folks stressed and the cities teeming with strife.
Dr. Michael Johnson will be here with more of his cowboy logic after a ride back from the urban world to the trails of yesterday with the Old West Trio.
Riding, 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 riding. Well, I'm riding, riding, riding back to yesterday, and I'm straddling my saddle high and wide. I'm trading traffic jams and road rage for dusty trails and prairie sage and those city lights for stars up in the sky. And I'm headed for the hills on the horizon, and I'm shouting out a yippee-o-ki-yay, leaving behind these urban battles for Stetsons, boots, and saddles. I'm riding, riding back to yesterday. Well, every morning I wake up to the alarm clock, talking about the traffic on the interstate. Well, there's fender benders, rubberneckers, roadblocks. It's stop and go and hurry up and wait. Now I've had it with that noisy four-lane highway, and those tailgaters always on my tail. Well, it's stop and go and yield and slow. There's road signs everywhere I go. I'm exiting this metropolis hell. Well, I'm riding, riding, riding back to yesterday, and I'm straddling my saddle high and wide, leaving behind these urban battles for Stetsons, boots, and saddles. I'm riding, riding back to yesterday. Hey! I wanna hear that old red rooster every morning, and that lonesome coyote howling in the night, and those cattle lowing, breezes blowing, sage and tumbleweed roll, and the red tail circling high up in the sky. I'm riding, riding, riding back to yesterday. I'm straddling my saddle high and wide. I'm trading traffic jams and road rage for dusty trails and prairie sage, and those city lights for stars up in the sky. And I'm headed for the hills on the horizon. I'm shouting out a yippee-o-ki-yay, leaving behind these urban battles for Stetsons, boots, and saddles. I'm riding, riding, riding back. I'm riding, riding, riding back. I'm riding, 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 riding back to yesterday.
Well, that's a collection of new songs of the West that kind of sound like the old songs of the West, but maybe even better from the Old West Trio. Well, when the evening chores are done, the alarm is set and that bedside lamp is turned off and the big harvest moon shines in the window, it's nice to be able to say, well, it was kind of a tough day, but I think I was just about the best I could be. That's good. On the subject of being your best, here's the Calf-Roping psychologist, Dr. Michael Johnson.
There are a number of keys to success. There are many behaviors we can engage in to improve our performance. However, before I say another word, let me caution you to remember that none of them work unless you do. I've been fascinated by this topic since I was young. Doing better, we'll call it. Coming from a background of failure, I was stunned to learn there were people who had similar experiences, yet somehow learned to do a great deal more with what at first appeared to be very little. They even wrote books about this process. And when I found those books and read them and believed them and did what they said, my life took a dramatic turn. I didn't win the Nobel Prize, but I did manage to remain free from any U.S. prison so far, which still surprises a lot of folks in my hometown. Let me tell you about one of those books. A long time ago, I rodeoed all over the country. And like many of my compadres, I wasn't very good. I could tie a calf in 11 or 12 occasionally, and in those days, you might earn a 5th or a 6th sometimes. But my skills were nothing compared to what it took to win on a regular basis. I rode bareback horses and saddle broncs, and my whole career can be summed up in the line I always use, and that was the IRS was never after me for unreported winnings. Yet, something did happen on that road that turned me in a new direction, and that was that a friend of mine knew this other fella who rode bulls. The other fella was about like us, not too great, but did well enough to get by. After a time, however, this cowboy began to really win. I mean, really win. And we asked him what happened to him. How did he get better? His answer was that he read a book. A book about rodeo? A book about riding bulls, we asked him. No, he said. A book about not defeating myself.
Well, if we've got you wondering who that guy is and what book he read, you'll find out when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. You know, they were one of the finest blends of female voices ever recorded, and that puts them in some pretty impressive company, like the gals of the Golden West, the Andrews Sisters, the McGuire Sisters, Daughters of the Purple Sage, Horse Crazy, Journey West, Sisters of the Silver Sage. But there's another group I'm thinking of, and I'll play one from them after we get back to Dr. Michael Johnson and the bull rider who got to the top of his game by reading a book.
His answer was that he read a book. A book about rodeo? A book about riding bulls, we asked him. No, he said. A book about not defeating myself. A book about how I feel about myself. Well, now that was strange. We had it pretty much figured out that anybody who read those kinds of books was either a communist agent or, worse yet, one of them dang hippies. So we ignored the whole thing and kept right on not getting any better. Later, using my brilliant plan about not getting any better, I got drummed off the road for lack of ability. I ended up at home, broke, with a pocket full of ifs, no ambition, no future, and then things turned much worse when my dad suddenly died at a young age. I went through a bad time for months, dark despair. And one day, for lack of something better to do, I picked up the latest copy of the Rodeo Cowboys Association Sports News. Checking over the standings, I noticed Clyde Van Voris was still kicking them in the bareback riding. Sean Davis was still tearing up the broncs. Dean Oliver was still catching calves faster than anybody else. And then my jaw dropped open. I was so stunned I could hardly speak. There at the top of the standings, did you hear that? I said at the top of the bull riding standings was none other than Gary LeFew, the other fella I was talking about. That fella who said he read a book about the thing inside him called the self. And brothers and sisters, there he was, sitting on top of the world. As I went rushing out of the house, my mother was so surprised to see me actually excited about something, she said, "Where on earth are you going?" I said, "To buy a book. I'm going to go buy a book." That really surprised her because I'd never read a book. And I did buy the book. The book was called Psycho-Cybernetics. I took it home and opened it with trembling hands. On one of the first few pages, the words stared back at me. Some students have read this book and changed from F's to A's. I closed the book and said a silent prayer. Lord, please let me be one of those. He was listening. I never made another B, C, D, or F ever again. So that brings up a question, doesn't it? Actually, two questions. How on earth could Gary LeFew go from average bull rider to world champion? How could an academic failure with a below-average IQ suddenly begin to make straight A's? A magic book? I thought so for a time, that the book was magic, But now I know the magic was not in the book. The magic is in us.
Well, stay with us. Michael continues the story in just a little while. Sylvia Tyson, Cindy Church, Caitlin Hanford, and the late Colleen Peterson debuted in 1993 in a group known as Quartet, with a beautiful blend of four-part harmony. And this one comes from their very first album.
Cowboys and rodeos, broncos and dusty roads, I've got it bad for those cowboys and rodeos. Some gals like do-si-do, some serenade real low, but I know the ropes to those cowboys and rodeos. Swing your partner, hold on tight, sweet as honey through the night. Take your boots off, set a spell, we ride the range so well. Cowboys and rodeos, broncos and dusty roads, I've got it bad for those cowboys and rodeos. Some gals like do-si-do, some serenade real low, but I know the ropes to those cowboys and rodeos. If you want to fence him in, he will lead you like the wind. You just have to let him ride, let the moonlight be your guide. Cowboys and rodeos, thrill me down to my toes, I've got it bad for those cowboys and rodeos. Cowboys and rodeos, swing your partner, hold on tight, pull no punches, it's our night. Take your boots off, set a spell, we ride the range so well. Cowboys and rodeos, broncos and dusty roads, I've got it bad for those cowboys and rodeos. Cowboys and rodeos, cowboys and rodeos.
And let's get back to the magic Dr. Michael Johnson is talking about.
Now I know the magic was not in the book. The magic is in us. People like Dr. Maxwell Maltz, the author of the book, just help us see how to get that magic out. Maltz was a plastic surgeon who, while removing scars from people's faces or repairing unattractive noses, noticed something odd. And that was, when people would come to have some disfigurement repaired, even if he restored the deformity, the patient believed the problem was still there. If he removed an ugly scar that caused a person to be self-conscious, later the patient would return saying people still stared and that he still felt ugly. Maltz would hold a mirror to the person and say, "No, you look perfectly normal." The patient would say something like, "Well, I know, but I still feel the same way, and people still think the same things about me." Maltz realized that he had repaired the outside of the person, but the core difficulty was inside. The real dragon was still in the dungeon. That was a brilliant insight. Dr. Maltz in his book went on to help thousands of people simply by asking them to question long-held internal self-defeating beliefs. Instead of that little voice in our minds saying, "You can't do this, besides you don't want to look like a fool, and who cares anyway?" He suggested we replace those words with these. "You know, maybe, just maybe, I could do this thing. After all, I see other people doing it. If I worked at it, if I listened to others who could do it well, I might get better. Even if I fail at first, I can try again, and the possibility exists that I just might develop the ability to perform this task." Maltz proposed that the first step was to just turn over in your mind the possibility that you could do better. The thought gives powerful new meaning to those words found in Scripture. Be not afraid, only believe. Now I can hear the radio evangelist screaming, "Amen in Him! The Lord meant in Him, not yourself." I understand the objection, but I really doubt the Spirit made us so we could all go around demeaning ourselves and not believing in who we are. We want our children to do well. Indeed, we want them to sparkle and shine. And it's my strong conviction that He wants His children to do the same. When you devalue yourself, your performance always suffers. And it seems to me that we're really being unappreciative of the gift that we've been given by the thing that sits at the center of the stars. I'm not talking about arrogance here. I'm talking about believing in your ability to do a thing before you can actually do it.
Mike is going to take us further through this fascinating process of thinking better thoughts and doing better things in a little while. Coming up, though, we'll bring you another good song, the Rangeland news, and next, Baxter Black and the story of the unfortunate hunters when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan. Ladies and gentlemen and followers of cowboy humor, I have carved another book from my funny bone, guaranteed to tickle your humorous. Sorry. The title is Scrambled Wisdom. Almost isn't is it? Which almost makes sense. Regardless, it's almost $20, only $19.95 plus shipping. Call 800-654-2550 or online at BaxterBlack.com. Here's a joke. What did he get on his IQ test? Drool. Good hunting camps do much to attract hunters, often year after year. Some camps are elaborate, others Spartan, but all boast a good cook. Hank's brother Dan ran a guide service in the Big Hole. He enjoyed much repeat business due, according to other outfitters, to his reputation of having the most entertaining camp in western Montana. The star of this Big Hole wilderness experience and wildlife procurement extravaganza was Big Eddie, a puppy-hearted pit bull power wagon cross. At 6'6", 280, with a full beard, he took up a lot of room in a two-man tent. He was, officially, the camp cook. There was a natural hot springs near the camp. Dan had tapped this resource by installing an 8-foot stock tank in the spring, thus creating the only hot tub on the mountain. One twilight, a member of the hunting party came in dog-tired. He swung up the trail to the hot tub, anticipating a good soak before supper. He surprised Big Eddie, who'd beat him to it. Eddie rose to his full height, shedding water like a 300-pound buffalo robe. The frightened hunter wheeled and ran into camp, screaming that there was a grizzly bear in the hot tub. Well, on another occasion, Big Eddie had stayed in camp during the day to watch the sourdough rise. From his tent that morning, he spotted a nice cow elk ease into a clearing near camp. Eddie grabbed his gun, chambered a shell, and stepped through the flaps. His dangling suspenders caught on the upright and jerked him over backwards. A shot rang out. The propane tank exploded. The supply tent caught on fire, disintegrating a pack train full of expensive, down-filled, waterproof, brand-name, guaranteed, color-coordinated, Davy Crockett recommended, eco-approved, nothing under $300 stuff. Not to mention a couple of Weatherbies. But despite his Boone and Crockett screw-ups, Eddie had a way about him that reminded the visiting hunter that they were in the presence of a primitive force. Eddie served stew one night. The whiner of the group stirred his spoon and then griped, "I don't like carrots." Big Eddie bent over the petulant hunter. He took the plaintiff's fork and picked the carrots out of his bowl one at a time and ate them. "There," he said. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan. Thanks for listening.
Join us Labor Day weekend for the 69th Annual North Thompson Fall Fair and Rodeo in Barrier, BC, September 1st to 3rd, with 3 full days of BCRA rodeo finals, pony chariot and chuck wagon races, entertainment stage, lawn tractor races, 4-H and livestock competitions, outdoor and indoor entertainment, bingo, amusements, heavy horse pulls competitions, light horse show, hundreds of entries in the exhibit hall, great food, commercial booths and exhibits for the children's area, and more. Take in our cowboy concert Sunday night and get all the details at fallfair-rodeo.com.
Bye.
It was sure nice to be able to enjoy Fred and Shirley Doberstein and their music. A while back, Fred and Shirley were in the stands at the main event in Red Deer for our informal cowboy church on the Sunday morning. I got to lead the singing of some good old gospel cowboy songs from horseback, and after being part of it, Fred wrote this song.
In my thoughts, there's a place, take me back there once again, with my friend at Cowboy Morning Church. Gathered at the horse corral, new friends and saddle pals praying at Cowboy Morning Church. We'll listen to the preacher man tell about the promised land of Jesus and his wonderful love. Have an old time, sing along, praise the Lord with the gospel song, good news at Cowboy Morning Church. There'll be folks with sweat-stained cowboy hats, run-down boots and old worn shafts, praying at Cowboy Morning Church. Thank you, Lord, for this brand new day where we live in the cowboy way. Ride a horse to Cowboy Morning Church. Some glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to our home on God's celestial shores. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. In my thoughts, there's a place, take me back there once again, with my friends at Cowboy Morning Church. Gathered at the horse corral, new friends and saddle pals praying at Cowboy Morning Church. Thank you, Lord, for this brand new day where we live in the cowboy way. Welcome to Cowboy Morning Church. Find your faith at Cowboy Morning Church. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. In the morning, when I die, hallelujah, by and by.
Now the news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says, so far, the grazing for 2018 has been superb in our part of the rangeland. Grass was stirrup high in the meadows, and the calves are really putting on the pounds. As good as this old cowboy's seen in quite some time, but how about the coming fall market? Well, let's check the numbers with Gary Crawford and an expert.
Friday's USDA cattle inventory and cattle on feed reports combined to tell the same story.
Although the expansion may not be over, it's definitely slowing down.
USDA livestock analyst Shale Shackham, right now the reports show big numbers in and out of feedlots. Inventories in feedlots with 1,000 head or more capacity on July 1st, the highest since at least 1996, with inventories up 4% from a year ago. Add in the other smaller feedlots, inventories also up 4% at 13.3 million head. Cattle waiting outside feedlots up 1% from a year ago. However, Shackham says
we are seeing producers retaining fewer heifers for beef cow replacement.
Heifers now account for 36.8% of total feedlot inventory,
which is the highest percentage since 2012.
Beef replacement heifers, July 1st, down 2% from a year ago, but with big feedlot inventories now, placements still topping a year ago. Shackham says
we're going to see some downward pressure on prices
until maybe the middle of next year. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Canadian corn is flowing into Europe at the fastest pace in 4 years, helped by retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. by the European Union that has actually shut American corn out of the bloc, according to some traders. Corn shipments to Western Europe countries rose 85% year over during the 9 months from the start of Canada's corn marketing year on September 1st, and they're on pace for a total of 1.2 million tons in 2017-18. That's the most since 2013-14, according to Canadian government data. Canada, the fourth largest wheat shipper, accounted last year for less than 1% of the world's corn exports. And here's something. A third chicken recall in as many days has been announced by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency due to a possible contamination with salmonella. The $10 chicken fries, a frozen breaded product distributed nationally by Loblaws, join another chicken recall of no-name brand chicken nuggets announced last week, along with an apparently unrelated recall of Ritz Bits. The chicken fries are in the 1.81 kilogram package with best before dates of March 23, 2019. 7 cases of salmonella enteritis illness has been reported in Canada in connection with eating breaded chicken products. 3 are in BC, 3 in Ontario, and 1 in Alberta. And those affected apparently got sick in June. Back on July the 19th, a tornado damaged JBS's Marshalltown, Iowa distribution center, forcing the company to dispose of more than 24 million pounds of pork. Wind store-out insulation and panels on the east side and west sides of the building. The freezer in the distribution center was damaged, and trailers and rail cars were also flipped in the store. Well, the amazing Western Spirit Band is on the road again this weekend. We are at the 42nd annual Ivan Danes Country Music Picnic, and it runs Saturday and Sunday. Actually started back on Wednesday evening, and if you're still in the area, come on up and say howdy. There will be a great extreme cowboy race event both Saturday and Sunday as well. And then Jim and Mike and I, the Western Spirit, look forward to seeing you at Old McDonald's Music Festival at Old McDonald's Farm, right on the south end of Buffalo Lake, kind of between Erskine and Stettler, Alberta. And we'll be there actually Saturday, September the 8th, right after the Alberta Legends of Country Music with special guest Pete Hicks. And you can get tickets only by calling this number, 403-742-6603. And the very important 4-H sale is at the BC Livestock Williams Lake Yards August the 13th. And then the regular cattle sale August 16th. Next Kamloops sale is August 21st. Get all the information at bclivestock.bc.ca. Meanwhile, over the Innisfail auction market, family run by the Danes family for so many years, there are regular cattle sales every Wednesday, and you can call ahead to book your cattle. There will be yearlings coming in pretty quick if they're not already started. And to book your cattle, call 1-800-710-3166. Now the final item. It was his first week of school in the first grade. He was 6 years old, and he was in trouble. The teacher said, "I don't know what I'm going to do with you. You sure talk a lot in class." And he said, "Oh, I can't really help it, teacher. It's hereditary. My uncle is an auctioneer. My cousin's a rodeo announcer, and my dad's a radio announcer." And the teacher says, "Well, what about your mom?" He says, "Well, she's a woman." And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the horse training file, the question, what verbalizing do I use when I'm giving signals to my horse? Well, there are a few words that I think every horse needs to understand, and I'll tell you what they are. And there's more from Dr. Michael Johnson when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. What verbalizing do I use when I'm asking my horses to do something? Well, I think there are a few key words that every horse needs to understand. The number to call for all the information, 1-866-530-0131. Now, the horse training file. A while back, I was watching the replay of a demo-type clinic I had done with Lucky on basic horse handling and ranch horse work, and at least half the session involved dealing with specific questions from the audience. And that's a format I really like if I'm horseback, because it's a lot easier to demonstrate something than it is to try and describe it when you can't see it. But somebody asked if I used much verbalization. And I automatically replied, "Oh, yeah, when I'm doing the radio show, it's pretty much all about verbalization. I probably talk more than I need to." "No," she said, "I mean, do you verbalize much to your horse?" "Oh, I see what you mean." And the answer is not very much. I only use about 3 forms of verbalization. First, and probably most important, is the W word. And my horses will learn this early in the groundwork. The W word, whoa. And the other verbal sound I use a lot is just kind of a cluck or a kissing sound. And you may have noticed that a lot of trainers use that, sometimes maybe too much. Kurt Pate said one time he could put on an interesting team together for training horses. It consisted of nothing more than a monkey and a squirrel. He'd put the monkey up in the saddle, and the squirrel would run along behind going ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. But that sound basically means to the horse, I want your attention now. If my horse starts to reach down for a mouthful of grass, I'll go, and that means stop doing that. I use that sound for a lot of different cues, and the horse learns to respond mostly from the amount of intensity I do it with. It can accompany a touch of my spurs to move faster, for example. And I guess the other verbalization I use, if I need to, is the B word. It just reinforces the cue for my horse to back up. And I do find myself saying back, back, back sometimes, and they get to understand what that means. I'll say a lot of other phrases like, good girl, Lucky, or nice job, or things like that, but that's mostly for my sake, and I'm not sure the horse interprets it literally. They understand the release of pressure, and a gentle stroke on the neck with my hand is more of a reward. And you can see a video demo of what I'm talking about on our website at hugh-mclennan.com. And that's the horse training file. With all the traveling that Lucky and I do, to brandings, performances, and events of all kinds, I can't risk losing a day because she got sick or reacted to a vaccination. That's why I use Calvenza vaccine. Calvenza is the only vaccine that protects her against 3 types of equine influenza and 2 types of rhinovirus, all in one shot. It even has one of the newest flu viruses, Ohio 03. Studies have shown that Calvenza protects against influenza for 12 months. Calvenza's smooth when you give it, too, so Lucky's ready whenever I need her. Talk to your veterinarian about vaccinating with Calvenza today. When I hear someone use the term cowboy in a negative way, I feel sorry for them and their unrecognized ignorance. Cowboy values, the cowboy way, has everything to do with honor, integrity, and respect. Dr. Michael Johnson is proud to call himself a cowboy. He's a great horseman, an awesome roper, and you will hear more from him after this song that says it all so well from Dan Roberts, If They Only Knew a Cowboy.
Everywhere you look these days, there's kids that look all kinds of ways. They still ain't figured out what they want to be. That what they've got's not who they are, and living fast won't get them far. And it's hard to find a hero on TV. But if they only knew a cowboy, they'd probably want to be one, 'cause he can show you how, boy, if you've ever seen one. Well, he's tough as you'll find, and he's callous, but he's kind, and he knows where he comes from. Yeah, if the kids these days learn the cowboy ways, they'd probably want to be one. Some folks say he's a dying breed, that the West is one, and now there ain't no need to live like you was born 100 years ago. Back in the days when your word was a nod, when you'd fight for your country and your faith was in God, and the code of the West was branded deep in your soul. Well, if they only knew a cowboy, they'd probably want to be one. He can show you how, boy, if you've ever seen one. 'Cause he's tough as you'll find, and he's callous, but he's kind, and he knows where he comes from. If the kids these days learn the cowboy ways, they'd probably want to be one. Well, he's tough as you'll find, and he's callous, but he's kind, and he knows where he comes from. Yeah, if the kids these days learn the cowboy ways, I bet they'd want to be one.
This week, Dr. Michael Johnson has been talking about being the best we can be, using great examples from the rodeo and cowboy world.
Doing better all starts with faith in your own heart. And if you don't like who you are and believe in what you have inside, you're going to have a devil of a time getting anyone else to like you. Interestingly enough, a good number of those in higher academics look down their collective noses at books like Maltz wrote and positive thinking in general. Many psychologists say it's all just wishful thinking, a fraud on the public, and it just doesn't work. Certainly, wishful thinking won't get the job done. Most all good books on doing better, however, are clearly talking about more than wishful thinking. Most all of the good ones that really help us list very similar behaviors that will improve performance. Having faith, focusing your crosshairs with laser-like precision on your heart's desire, listening to a master teacher skilled in your area of focus, and then this is the most important part, working your ever-loving tail off. That sounds like a plan to me. Besides, if all those psychologists were rich, happy, and had well-mannered kids, I'd be more impressed. Sadly, I never met many like that. We can't all be like Gary LeFew, but we can all do better. If it's parenting or teaching or team roping, we can develop faith in our heart. We can listen to a master, and we can do what the master says. And then, with extended effort, we have a chance to become a master too. Doing all those things, at least we have a chance.
Coming up, one of the most underrated cowboy entertainers you'll find, and sometimes he is hard to find, but I think you'll love what he does. And the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. You know, some of the biggest stars of country music, Nashville and the Grand Ole Opry, have been inspired by a few artists who are kind of under the radar of the mainstream, but probably more real and genuine than a lot of the chart toppers. Dan Roberts, who you heard earlier, is one example. He was Garth Brooks' horseshoer and eventually became the opening act for Garth's world tour a few years ago. Chris Ledoux had his name mentioned in one of Garth's first big hits. You see, there are some real cowboys singing songs about the life they live every day, but they'd rather spend their days doing a real cowboy's job than touring all over the country. And often the audience for their music and spoken word might be just a few friends around a campfire at the end of the day, or maybe just their wife and family on the front porch on a Sunday afternoon. That's the way it is with this guy. He sings and plays as well as anyone you'll see on country music television, but he'd rather be in the saddle than on the stage. This is Oklahoma top hand Kevin Davis.
Night falls way out on the prairie. Old moon shines soft and pale. Cattle are lowing, campfires are glowing. It's twilight on the trail. All day I sit in the saddle, dusk to dawn without fail. Then it's off my caballo and onto my bedroll. It's twilight on the trail. A night rider sings in the distance an old Irish lullaby. It makes me think of a sweetheart and brings one lonesome tear to my eye. No time to be sentimental, longing to no avail. I'll count the stars then, soon I'll be dreaming. It's twilight on the trail. Time to be sentimental, longing to no avail. I'll count the stars then, soon I'll be dreaming. It's twilight on the trail. Soon day will dawn and then I'll be longing for twilight on the
Slim McNaught of New Underwood, South Dakota, spent his early years in an old log ranch house on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in southwestern South Dakota. He started writing poetry in high school, but he didn't try his hand at reciting live on stage until 2004. And since that time, he's been busy going to cowboy poetry gatherings from Albuquerque to Medora. And he's also an outstanding leather-working artist. And no doubt a lot of you folks who catch us every Sunday morning on KBFS and Belle Fourche might know Slim. You can find out a lot more about him at cowboypoetry.com. Here he is in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight today with Headin' Home.
There's a time of day we put cares away and the herd is sorted and penned, and horses pace as they leisurely face the rewards that come with day's end. With soft clouds in the sky and shadows close by and the sun headed into the gloam, then we laugh and talk as our horses walk. Day's done, we're headed home. It's the time like these when a cowboy sees the satisfaction of this life, with the world in a mess and many folks stressed and the cities teeming with strife. But a cowboy's way of working each day have rewards that for some aren't known. So we're happy then that the time comes when day's done, we're heading home. In this land of ours, we're blessed with powers of freedoms to live life our way. And as the afternoon heat beats a retreat, we're content with the toil of the day. And deep in our hearts, we would never part from this range where we're born to roam. It's that time of day to put cares away. Day's done, we're heading home.
Well, thank you so much for making the ride with us this week, and thanks again to our support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan at Meadow Springs Guest Ranch. Now, if you'd like a real ranch vacation, check out their site at meadowsprings.com. And Mark is the wizard behind our website at hugh-mclennan.com, and he can build you one that really works, too. Thanks to the 100 Mile Net Shop for web hosting and distribution. You know, much of the music I play can be ordered at the website of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. That would be canadiancowboy.ca. And next week, we will have for you the name of the third trainer in the Trainers Challenge at the Main Event Horse Expo coming up in Chilliwack in October. And I think you'll be quite interested to hear who it's going to be. Till next week, I am Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.